Welcome to the Surviving Siblings podcast. I'm your host, Maya Roffler. As a surviving sibling myself, I knew that I wanted to share my story, my brother's story. I lost my brother to a homicide in November 2016, and after going through this experience, I knew that I wanted to share my story and his story. And now it's your turn to share your stories. Today I have, of course, another incredible surviving sibling with me. I want to welcome Katie to the show. Katie, welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And I'm really, really looking forward to kicking off the season with your story and Patrick's story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Tell us a little bit about Patrick, and then we'll get into, Patrick's story.
Okay. So, Patrick, I'm the oldest, and then Patrick's the baby. And I just remember my mom and dad telling me that, hey, we're going to have a baby. I didn't know if it was going to be a brother or a sister. So that was a surprise when he was born. But they talked to me about being a big sister, no matter what the baby is, and how important that job was. So I literally took it like, this is my duty in life to be a sister. Patrick was born, and I thought it was just perfect. He was my little baby. He was just full of life. He was born the day before St. Patrick's Day. So he always thought his ears would get pointy towards St. Patrick's and his birthday because he was a little leprechaun. He was just full of life. He loved sport and just a fun little kid. And in kindergarten, he decided once a fire truck came, that's when he decided he wanted to be a fireman. And ever since he was in kindergarten, that's all he talked about was being a fireman or a baseball player, but mainly a fireman.
Wow. So he knew really young, like this
Yeah.
was his path.
Yes.
That.
Yes.
It's so cool. That's very cool.
It was really cool.
Yeah. So I think that's always so interesting. I connect so much with your story, Katie, because one, like I'm the oldest as well, right?
Yeah.
We're around the same age too.
Right.
And, I know what that's like. And I have a sister who's 10 years younger than me. And I know what that's like to have, a sibling come along and your parents are like, okay, and you take it so seriously. You're like their other parent. It's a big responsibility. So I definitely get that. So tell us a little bit about, and I'm the oldest of four. So again, totally get you, girl.
Yeah. You do. It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it really is. So tell us a little bit about how Patrick evolved, because he knew very early on, like he was into baseball and fire trucks, and he goes the fireman route. So tell us how that happened for him.
So he basically evolved in he kept in the sports in school, and then when it became college time, he basically just signed up for wildland fire first. And that was in Reedley. And then he did that for a little bit. And then he decided he wanted to change it more to city fire. So that's where he attended Porterville City College and did the fire academy. And then during this time period, he would visit each station in our little cities, go and hang out and talk to the chiefs and just kind of say, hey, I'm Patrick and this is what I want to be, and show me what it's like in here. So he was a hustler and like going to different stations and like really wanting to know the groundwork and how it operates and everything. And in the meantime, he's doing the fire academy. So he was just very driven, and I love that. And after the academy, you become a reserve. So he became a reserve with Porterville Fire. And he literally has the most hours ever in the history for Porterville for reserve hours, and you don't get paid. He just wanted to be there all the time. He wanted to be a fireman that bad. And like, that was his dream. So
it's amazing. Yeah. He makes me feel like fired up, literally.
Right?
Like, wow. I'm like,
yes.
That must have been so cool for you as his older sister, like to watch him do that, where you just, I can tell you're so proud still, but you must just be like, wow, like this kid is like really motivated.
He is so motivated. And to see his mindset and like go full force, it was like, wow, look at you go, little Petey. Like, I cheered him on, his biggest fan. And and still to this day, that's what keeps me going, is like the drive for life and for his passion that, it's just so inspiring. And he would say, this isn't my job. This is my hobby. Like, how lucky am I to be doing my hobby every day? So I thought that was pretty cool.
You just gave me chills because my brother said something very similar about his
Did he?
music to me. So yeah, that's very weird. And
Yeah.
very cool. And like, again, I feel like the theme for the season, like what a great way for us to kick off, because the theme for the season really is connection.
Yeah.
And here's another example. Like I really find that we all connect, especially all of us who have lost siblings. Like, and I feel like this happens for other types of loss too, right?
Yeah.
Within the community, we're kind of all interwoven and we all connect in different ways. And there's so many things about your story that I can connect with that I'm sure you guys are going to connect with as well, or already have. And I think it's just, well, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me, as I'm sure yourself. It's also something where, if we can find connection and community, it's a beautiful thing. So anyway, that's, again, when I hear things like that, I'm like, I just get chills and I feel like it's my brother's here with us.
Yes, he sure is, for sure.
And I feel like Patrick is too.
Yes.
So that's amazing. Like, he's super driven. So tell us a little bit about how he got into, what was next for him? He got into a particular position. I don't know a lot about being a fireman, so I'm really curious. What was next? He had all these volunteer hours. I'm like blown away by this.
Yeah. So it's all the reserve hours. And then, so reserve hours, you have so many, like, I think it's 2 days a week or whatever, but he was there literally every single day. He would even sleep in his truck, even on not the reserve hours, because he wanted to be there. He didn't want to miss the opportunity on not learning. And so after reserve, if you become a probation. So probations kind of do all the grunt work. Like, you get your captain's coffee at 3 a.m. You do like all the things. You don't get to watch TV with the guys. It sounds weird, but it's like, that's just probation, you basically clean the equipment and everything. So you go from probation, then hired on. And so he got hired on. And so he reserved 2015, hired on 2017, he was announced to the city. And the crazy thing is when he was announced to the city, it was like February 12th, 2017, and he died February 18th.
Yeah.
2020. Like, that's just kind of weird to me,
That is weird.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was the next step. So he got hired on, announced to the city, which was awesome to watch. Just the pride and like the look in his face was like, I made it. And I was just holding back all the tears, because I just want to run and give him such a big hug, but he's up there and proud. And then after that, you keep doing so much training, and you go to LA, you go to your cities, and you just keep up on your logs and trainings. He was working on being an engineer next. So it goes probation, firefighter, engineer, captain. And so most of their goals are to be all of them, each at one time. So, that's kind of,
it's almost like you're interning, like, like out in like the corporate world, like, it's like you're interning, or like in the frat world, maybe it's kind of like hazing in the beginning. You got to do all the stuff you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're always like, just
I've never known.
Yeah.
I've never known. Yeah. That is cool. Yeah, that is very interesting that he had his ceremony and it like 3 years later, which of course we're going to talk about, died. And so it's interesting when we look back on our stories and we tell our stories, like where we see these dates and they seem, we're like, oh, that was actually probably a little more significant, or maybe they become more significant to us.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. We hope you're enjoying this incredible episode of the Surviving Siblings podcast. I'm your host, Maya Roffler. We'll be back in just a minute after hearing from our incredible sponsor.
It has been said that grief is all the love you have for someone that cannot be expressed. There is no choice. If we love, we grieve. When you experience deep, painful grief, you need support. It can be difficult to know how to navigate loss or how to be there for someone that has. What if we told you there's a way to bring healing and hope to those who need it the most? We're Gloves for Grief, a 501c3 organization formed from our own pain that transformed into powerful purpose. Through our own grief journey, we realized the shortcomings of available resources and how grief is not something openly discussed. We are on a mission to make meaningful and long-lasting grief support available to more families in their time of need. Your generous donation will help provide essential mind, body, soul resources to grieving families in desperate need of support. A Visa gift card for immediate supplies during a difficult time, a self-care experience, offering moments of relaxation and rejuvenation, a 2-night grief retreat, providing a safe space to heal, 3 months of one-on-one therapy to help families work through their pain. We also offer corporate event sponsorships and matching opportunities to support the growth and expansion of our events and grief resource programs. Join us in spreading love and support to those who need it most. Together, we can bring light into the lives of grieving families and help them navigate their journey of healing. Visit glovesforgrief.com/donations to make your donation today. Be the difference in someone's life. Give the gift of healing.
So he gets announced to the city. So he's in his job and he's loving it for 3 years, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he
And
absolutely
so,
loved it.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about what that life was like for him. He was just happy. He was, did you guys live close to each other? Were you interacting with him a lot? What was that like?
Oh yeah. So, we definitely talked every single day. And then when he got off shift, he would make sure he would call me on his way home just to like, hey, I'm on my way home. Actually, he would typically FaceTime me. So, once he got home, hey, I'm home. Let's go for a car ride. So we always like to go and just kind of relax, listen to music, and just kind of just have our deep conversations in the car. So we would just do whatever when he got off work, but we interact all the time. Even when he was at the station, if I called him and one time he was like on a call on the way, like the lights and sirens were going off, and I didn't obviously know, but he answered the phone and like, what's happening over there? He's like, I'm on my way to a call, but I just want to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, no, I'm fine, but you just go ahead, call me later. Just always, we're just very, very close. So it's kind of inseparable. So it's hard for him to be, if I say in Porterville, it's about 40 minutes away. So it seemed far away when he was gone. And holidays were different because he wasn't always here because he was working. So that they're on 48 hours and then off 4 days and then on 48 off 4. So it's just kind of how the shift works. And a lot of the younger guys, like probation or new firefighters, would have to do all the holidays, and the captains and other older firemen would get the holidays off.
Yeah, because they've done the time and they have families now. And
exactly. Yeah. So if you just kind of become part of that, you just get used to that life,
Yeah. I love like hearing that he loved what he was doing so much. Like that's such a like beautiful part of this story. And I think it's so cool. Like I always find it so interesting when people know so young too, just to go back to what we were mentioning earlier. And then he like, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, is there a spiritual aspect to this? Like, do we, like some people just come onto this like planet knowing what they want to do. And I think that's really cool because my life has been totally different. It's just been an evolution.
Mine too. Mine too. That's why I'm like, dang, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's inspiring. Yeah.
So cool. So were you with him in this position and like loving what he was doing, and were you freaked out as his older sister? Like, were you nervous about it, or did that really occur to you? I'm always curious when people have anyone in general, but when people have siblings that are military, police, firemen, things like this, because they are in, a dangerous job. Like, what were you thinking in those years?
So in these years, I knew his job was dangerous. But he would always tell me like, I'm so safe, or I do these trainings, don't worry about me. And, but when he would go to out of county, so out of county is when there's wildfire and all like the little towns, like they burn, you've probably seen them on the news in California.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So he was at a lot of those. And that made me those times I was really scared because I thought that was more dangerous than city. And honestly, it's both. But, yeah. So when he would be out of county, I wouldn't be able to sleep. I would just be on pins and needles. And so I never honestly thought anything, I guess I just never thought anything would happen. Maybe because he always made sure that I felt that he was so safe. And now looking back, he's always been my protector. And I think that's what he was trying to do, to be honest. So, yeah, when it did happen, I was floored.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
It's interesting too, because it's like, he's still, I go through this too, because my brother was younger than me. And
Yeah.
so even though he was younger than me, a brother is still a brother, right? They're very protective. But I think what's interesting in your story is that Patrick, that was just who he was and is, right? I mean, this is the job he also chose too, like the career, it's kind of in his blood. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, we're talking at exactly the time it was 4 years ago. So take us through what happened 4 years ago, Katie. And I can see why you feel the way that you feel, because you were so worried about the wildfires, being out in California and all of that. But actually what happened to him was in the city and totally different. So tell us about that.
So let me start by saying his station 71 is literally backed up to the library. They don't share a wall, but you could walk down that little access street. But so close. So the alarms went off at 4:15 and for a fire inside the library. And they got in their truck and literally 2 seconds drove there. An officer came running out of the building. I saw the body cam in court, so I'm kind of like replaying this all in my head for you guys. And the fire was started in the kids section. So under a gazebo with stuffed animals, it was like a little preschool section. And there were actually kids and classes and everything going on at this library at this time. It's such an active library. It's really, really a neat thing to see, because that's not normal. I don't know. And if your town libraries are active, but this one, it's amazing.
There's one in the city that is, and that's about it. But it's not like typical libraries in like towns around Atlanta and stuff, or even major. It's not typically. So it is a beautiful thing to see. I get what you're saying.
So the officer came out and told Patrick, was talking to him like, hey, the fire's back in the corner in the kids section. You got this. And when he was talking to Patrick, another officer came to Captain Figueroa and was saying there's a handicapped lady missing inside second floor. So change of plans, they geared up in their oxygen, like turnouts, all the things to get into a burning building. They went in there and being fueled by books, the stuffed animals and all, all the fire hazard. It would just got so smoky. The fire was just, honestly, it's the worst a lot of firemen I've ever even seen or been in. And then they were searching. It was so smoky. They got turned around and they would radio in and say, hey, we're right here by the stairs, because they could feel the stairs, but their cameras weren't seeing anything. And basically they couldn't find the lady. Turns out that she already got out, but they ran out of air. So there's a mayday call and they ran out of air. And by the time, they could get to the captain, once you run out of air, it's kind of, you suffocate. So they were trying to revive the captain, but couldn't. And then the building started collapsing, and then Patrick went missing for 36 hours. And so, yes.
And so they were searching for a handicapped child and could not find the child. And this is
a handicapped lady. Yeah. A handicapped lady upstairs. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. But she did get out because there were stairs up top. And I guess an officer went upstairs from the back and got her out. And nobody related to them. I don't know. It was really a chaotic mess. One of communication, which is awful,
Yeah.
And, so that's how he lost his life in the fire.
Now tell us your perspective and your side, because you obviously saw the body cam footage, which we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what you're sharing right now
Yeah.
with us,
Yeah.
which I can't even imagine. We're going to talk about your experience and seeing that. But tell us about how you found out about this. Like, we all talk about this, the call.
Yeah.
Who called you? Who told you about this? Because he was missing for 36 hours.
Yes.
So
So,
walk us
okay.
through your side of it. I'm really curious, and I'm sure you guys are too, what that was like.
So, I was folding laundry and I never really turn on the TV at nighttime. Like it was like 8:30 and I was just kind of wanted to, get ready for bed and whatnot. So, but I just turned on the TV, the news popped on and it said Porterville Library fire, 1 dead, 1 missing. And immediately my heart just sank because I just knew he was the missing one. And it was weird. These tears were so big and heavy just falling from my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's missing. And I tried calling my parents, my brother, Gregory. Nobody was answering. So I knew something had to be going on. And so they were all trying to figure out too. I called Patrick's phone. That just was going to voicemail, which was weird because it's not normal. And so I just kept waiting by the phone and pacing and pacing. And during this time, the chaplain and a captain were at my parents' home telling them that Patrick was missing. So they couldn't release it on the news until they talked to the families. So after that, they went to my house. My mom called me and said, hey, we're heading to your house. And I was like, okay, but why don't you tell me why you're coming to my house? Because it was late. Like, what's happening? She's like, no, I'll just tell you when we get there. And I said, no, you just got to tell me right now. Like, what's going on? We'll talk about whatever when we get here, but like, just tell me now. And I remember I sat down on the couch. When she told me Patrick's missing, I shot up like Tigger, like, no. And I just pace, like this can't be happening, So then, with my parents and Gregory got to my house and we talked about him missing and what the chaplain and what the captain said and what to kind of prepare for. And honestly, I just thought, okay, but he has oxygen, right? Like he can make it out if he just gets in a little hole. Like he's the baby. He knows how to hide in holes. He was creative, growing up, like, climbing trees and whatnot. And they were like, no, he's not. It's like, he's not going to make it. So that was hard to grasp too. It's like, if you have oxygen, why can't you make it? But I didn't understand the dynamics and how it all works. But that's how I found out. And then they said that they had to call off the search for momentarily because of the building collapsing and unsafe to go in for anybody. And then but they kept keeping us updated every 30 minutes to an hour of what's happening and when the search would resume.
Wow. I can't even imagine. And what you're describing sounds a lot like almost kind of like bargaining in a sense, right? It's kind of like, but if this could happen, this could happen,
Right.
and this could be, this could be. And it's interesting because listening to your story, Katie, I often tell people, I'm like, I don't think I really went through that experience, but I do think in reflection, there was a very short period for me when I was driving to the hospital to see my brother where I was like, well, maybe there's some rare thing they can do to like, help him and, and there absolutely wasn't. There wasn't. But there's things that happen in those times where we're like, but miracles happen. Like this can happen, So I connect with this part of your story as well. And I'm sure a lot of you too as well. And so 36 hours of just pure, I can't even imagine, right? It's just the worst feeling ever.
Yeah. It's a weird
feeling. To give yourself hope. So tell us how the 36 hours concludes. Like what happens? Does somebody come to your door? Does somebody say, okay, this, like, we found him? Like what happened?
So during this time period, and I'll try to paint like a good picture for you guys. All firemen were still standing by. And we also had help from all like Cal Fire, all different city fires, not just Porterville, because it was so massive. But in firefighters, like no one leaves a brother behind. So they all stood up and they all waited for him. And there was a search team once they could resume. They brought a dog in from LA. I believe her name was Roxy. On a helicopter, they brought her in. Yeah. I looked it up and I'm like, I have to thank this dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
sweet.
they brought her in and searched for him. They ended up finding him. So once they found the scent, they immediately called my dad and said, hey, we got a scent on him and we're going to start digging the metal off, is what they said. And so that was weird. I'm like, metal? Like, I guess, you don't really think. I just thought, oh, we found him. Like, come on, let's go. Like, but yeah, they had to dig metal off, which took 6 hours to get off because also there was so much on him, but they wanted to obviously be very careful. But the amount of metal on him, gosh, if you were in a regular size, like a bedroom and not vaulted ceilings, just a regular ceiling, it was all the way up to the ceiling. I saw the pile when we arrived and it was just.
So like 8-foot or 10-foot ceilings.
Yes,
Like, oh my gosh. That's insane.
The amount
That's
of metal.
insane.
It's
Wow.
insane. Yes. So they got him out and, or undug him and, they kept us updated with that point, it was like every 2 hours. And then, the last hour that they called, they said, okay, we almost got him. And we see his clothes turn out. And so why don't you guys just get in your car, head this way? And I think that we had to be at the police station, close to the fire station, in Porterville. And we got there at 4 a.m. So, we arrived at 4 a.m. while they were, doing the final touches on him. And, they were sitting and talking to us in the office and saying, listen, this is what's going to happen. The whole thing was just surreal. Like, I'm just trying to process like the medals on him and then this and that he's missing. And so I'm trying to listen and, they said, okay, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out this back door and I'm going to guide you. And it's going to be very smoky, which it was. It was just full of smoke. And please don't look to the left because there's a lot of debris and metal that was taken from him. And honestly, like, that was hard because I'm going to look. I want to know what was on him, right? I
Probably should have told me, like, make sure you look, and then you probably wouldn't have
right.
looked.
Yeah, right.
Reverse psychology, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So as we're walking out, it's so smoky and there's a giant flag hanging down from a fire ladder. And I look at all that metal and I was just, I couldn't, it took my breath away. Like all of this was on my baby. Like that's how I thought it, And then I looked down the way and both sides of the road were lined up with personnel on each side, officers, firemen, the dog on the end. And they were all saluting. And we got down and there's a van, like the morgue van, or I think that's what it's called, the sheriff's van. And at the end. So we walked close to the van. They walked us to the van and we still had a ways to go. All of a sudden, and now it's like about 5 a.m. So all of a sudden, trumpets start playing and bagpipes start playing Amazing Grace. And then I'm like, what is happening? Like, where's Patrick? Like this, I had no idea. All of a sudden I see from the back of the library building, the flag, the end of the flag. And then they were carrying him out with Amazing Grace bagpipes in front of him. And that was like the longest walk because at 36 hours, it was so crazy missing him. And then when you miss, you want to run to them, right? You think, of course, they're here. like, let me go hug you, but you can't. And he's being carried out by 6 of his brothers under a flag and then we get him to the van. And then that's just kind of how we get him back from the library.
That is such an emotional experience. Like,
it is.
Thank you for sharing that, Katie, because you describe it very well. And I think it is very difficult. I know firsthand to do that. So thank you. I'm like getting emotional listening to you. Do you feel like that was the moment when it sank in that he was gone? Do you feel like up until that moment you kind of had a false hope, or what were your feelings? Because for me, I went through a lot of different emotions in my journey, and there were moments where it was just way too surreal, and then there were moments where I was like, okay, this is really happening. Well, that must have been a big moment for you.
That was a big moment. It was so surreal though. I guess I couldn't grasp and believe that this was really happening. And I remember standing there and I seeing him under the flag and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my brother. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, if that I was going to get to see him. And I guess I was holding on to hope that they found him and he's just going to come walking out like, hey guys, I'm here, you know? But, no. And then after that, so from Porterville to Tulare to get to the morgue is, 45 minutes. So they had closed down the highway and I didn't know this. And so as we're driving and being, escorted by police and firemen, you have people lined up saluting him the whole way there.
My God.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. Kids made signs. Little kids were doing flags, salute. Like, what? It was so all of that whole thing was surreal. And then when we got to the morgue and we got to go in there with him. And I remember touching his arm and I still can feel that feeling, but I think I was still in shock of like, oh gosh.
Was he still covered by the flag when you got to the morgue?
He was still covered by the flag.
Yeah.
I lifted up the flag and wanted to touch his arm.
How did I know this was going to be part of the story? Because you are so like me, girl. Yes. Yeah.
Like,
so you're there and you lift up the flag.
Yeah. I just
touch his arm.
Yeah. And there's two honor guards standing on each side of him. Like I said, they never leave they don't want to leave a brother behind. So even in all the things that happen after that, there's, 2 honor guards with him. So I'm like, oh gosh, I hope I don't get in trouble. But honestly, it's my brother. Like I really just want to snuggle up to him, honestly. And I didn't know if I could do that. So I'm like, I'm just going to touch his arm, you know? So that's what I did. And I just remember walking out and that door closing and I'm like, oh my, like, this is weird. Like, you're never going to see him again. So his head was covered by a helmet, I'm assuming, right? And so that was still there and they didn't remove anything at that time. Yeah. Okay. So we've learned later on after, how he was found that normally one of the fire guys was like, can I talk? Called my mom and said, hey, you know, this is something I think like you should really know, how he was found with when we took off the metal. And this was later on, like a year later. But it was just weighing on his heart of like what, you know, seeing people fall from 2 stories. It shouldn't look like this, but everything was perfectly on him. Even his radio was everything was placed ever so gently. He's like, it didn't look like he fell, but he did. And to have no burn marks, he had a little bump on his head, but he had a helmet on still and all his face mask and everything. So, no burn marks or anything, from what the autopsy said. Yeah.
And so this particular fellow coworker was like, I wanted to share this with you.
Yeah.
Like, what I saw, and
because they've never seen they've never seen anything like that. Because normally when people fall, their stuff is scattered everywhere and they look like they fell. But he looked like he was placed there. And everything was just like next to him or on him. That makes sense.
Wow. Well, it
Yeah.
makes sense what you're
Yeah.
describing, but how did
Yeah.
that happen? That's very odd.
I don't know. I know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Well, so tell us, so you walk out of the
Yeah.
room and you're
Yeah.
having that moment, which I
Sure.
connect with so deeply, and I'm sure a lot of you
Yeah.
guys do as well, where you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to see his physical body again.
Yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
a moment. What
Yeah.
happened next for you guys? I mean, what is next at this? It's such a big moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I literally, well, I mean, I went home and just cried. Like, I didn't, we're just trying to figure out things of how, because now you have to plan a funeral and
Yep.
all the things, right? But I just like literally wanted to die because I couldn't understand of how I was supposed to live without him. Like I literally asked the pastor, and now it was my life coach, but in the kitchen, I'm like, well, how do I even breathe? Like, how do I live? Like, how am I going to wake up tomorrow? Like there's no point, you know? So, yeah, that's just, but I kind of had to, obviously I was breathing, but I just, it's just like, how do you do these things without him? Because it felt like if he's not here, then, I don't know how to do it. Right.
It
So
feels like you're making your body breathe. It feels like
yes.
you're so
Yeah.
exhausted. Like I'm again connecting so much with what you're saying. And I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys have felt this too. Like it feels like you're making your body do it. We all know if you just chill out, your body will breathe on its own. The heart
Yeah.
keeps beating on its own unless you do
Right.
die, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
it feels like you're making all of those things happen because you're so exhausted and in
Yeah.
shock. And like,
Yeah.
so I connect with that too.
Yeah. 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 Gosh, we have a lot. We connect on a lot of things here.
Yeah, yeah. These are common things that, come up a lot too in this.
Yeah.
And I think they're just not talked about enough. And I just really appreciate
Yeah.
how open you are about it because it is
Yeah.
something that we all feel. We're like, how am I supposed to go to sleep again? How am I supposed to wake up again? How am I supposed to breathe again? And it's like, well,
Right.
I'm breathing right now, but no, how am I supposed to do it
Right.
for real?
Because when you start thinking about it, you can't.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
so curious, what did your pastor say to you when you said that?
I remember her looking at me and she said, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
So, and then, and I thought that was kind of an odd answer because I'm like, want that now. But because we were in the midst of the kitchen and, she stepped me aside and she said, let's practice breathing right now. And like we did deep breaths and everything, which is interesting because my brother would do this with me because I have a lot of anxiety and he always would make sure like, Katie, you need to breathe. Just come on, let's breathe. And so now she's doing this with me. And this was before she's my life coach. I just met her. And I'm like, and she's doing these things that Patrick would teach me to do. So interesting, right?
Oh, I totally believe she was sent to you. Like,
Yes.
Way too weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a
Way
good way.
too weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's kind of how it started with the breathing of like, okay, I'm going to show you. And every day she texts me and she calls me and she said, let's just breathe. And I like that a lot. Like now looking back, it was great because it wasn't so much words going on. It was just like exactly what I needed. And it was my brother telling me to breathe here almost, even though he isn't here, I was seeing it through her. So, that's how the breathing started. And, so, which was great because I needed that help to breathe because we had a funeral to plan. And on top of that, when you're a fireman killed in the line of duty, they send these honor guards and they send them from it was back in Maryland is where the National Fallen Firefighters are. So they come over here and they help plan the memorial and all the bagpipes and the funerals. And so the boys had Captain Patrick had a big memorial together. And then 2 days later, the captain had his funeral and then Patrick had his funeral. So it was a lot of funerals and
it's a lot.
It's a lot. So yeah. So that breathing, I just try to keep doing the breathing.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely she started talking to me like, okay, let's implement this in. But I think it was just the breathing to get me through that. To remind me to breathe. I also, because I hold, you hold your breath a lot.
Oh my God,
I'm sure
yes.
you do.
I'm sure all of us can relate to this.
Yeah.
I've struggled with anxiety my whole life too.
Yeah.
And when this happens, it just throws
Yeah.
you back. You lose all the tools, right? That you've
Yeah.
gained over your years. You're like,
Yes.
because, I was 30 when my brother was killed. And I was
Yeah.
like, I thought I
Okay.
really just had it together, Katie. I was
Yeah.
like, I got
Yeah.
this. And then it's like every tool I had learned to deal with
Right.
my anxiety or anything I'd gone through in my life out the window. Out the window. What was that?
I don't know. Now we start over. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So talk us so it sounds like your pastor has been a huge help in your life. And it's
Yeah.
I love how she sounded just like Patrick. I do think we're sent these amazing people
I do
on
too.
this journey, right? That
Yes.
and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
My brother would have said that, or my sister would have said that, or
Right.
it's like I needed to hear that. And we are sent those people even in our darkest times. And we have to just be open to it. Like that would be
Yeah.
my, my
Yeah.
takeaway, definitely. And it sounds like, you were open to it.
Yes.
So walk us through how obviously you have these significant events that happen. It wasn't
Mhm.
just his funeral. It was the captain. It was the
Yeah.
traditional memorial. And then now did you guys get the autopsy report soon after? Like what did life
Yeah.
look like for you after that?
Yes. So after that, the autopsy report came in, the fire reports came in, the fire investigation reports, and also the Stark report. So when there's a big incident like this, the fire, whatever the Stark, there's certain people they have come in and do the Stark report, and it's a very, very thorough report to break down everything, and they interview everybody, and that way they take these reports and they learn off of them so this doesn't happen again and whatnot. So a lot of report and the certified death certificates and the stuff like that. And I think the autopsy report, it was hard because autopsies are weird, right? And it's like, wow, my brother had an autopsy, it's just,
That's why I wanted to ask you that, Katie, because it is a moment for a lot of people.
it's a moment.
And I see a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people talk to me about it. And
Yeah.
it is a moment. I don't think it's something we talk about enough because
No.
reading that for me was horrific. And
Yeah.
so I was curious about your experience. I'm like, your story is so incredible. And I'm sure
Yeah.
that was a lot.
Yeah.
And it is weird. That's a good way
So
to say it. They're
weird.
just weird because it's so
Weird.
medical. And you're like, this is my
Yeah.
person. Like, this
Yes.
is my brother or your
Yeah.
sister, right? That you're reading about.
Mhm.
And it's like, for us, it's brothers, but it's weird because it's so factual. And like, that's
Yeah.
how it was for me. Is that
Yes.
what you
Yes.
experienced? Yeah.
Yeah. It's very factual. And it's like, also, I'm very visual and, and you're like, oh my gosh. And
You see it in your head.
Yes.
I
Yes.
did too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did. Okay. Yeah. And
Mhm.
and being his big sister, and I'm sure you can relate, it's just like, I just felt, gosh, that shouldn't be him on there. That's just horrible to be on an autopsy table. I think that was really, to this day, it just makes my insides just hurt. I'm just like, oh, that's awful. Honor guards were there. 2 firefighters stand guard, but he did have an autopsy, which I thought was like, oh, like that. Thank you guys for not leaving him alone in that cold room. Like that's honestly, after that, reading that, he suffocated. But the no burn mark thing was a big deal. Like, thank you, Jesus. Like he wasn't burned. I didn't want him to be burnt. And also the contusion on his head. But, other than that, they said he looked pretty good. He looked, so I'm glad he looked good. His hair, they put his hair as black, but he's blonde. And so, that's just the smoke. That's how thick the smoke was in his hair. And he had all the gear on and then they have a cap on they wear under the gear. So I'm like, wow, that's so crazy. Yeah. I just think, the autopsy really, it still gets me to this day. And reading the Stark report too of that incident, the fire, it was just
That
kind
was
of
my
like,
next question for you. Yeah. What exactly happened? And because, we talked about it just for a second in the beginning, but what happened? What did they discover in that report?
So the kids with the report and in the trial, the kids started the fire with the lighter. So they found the spring and then the lighter and everything. So that's how it started. This library is so old. There was no sprinkler system. And it's sealed by books.
And it's an older
And
building, so
it's an
God
older
only
building.
knows what was
Yes.
in the
Yes.
building, and there's stuffed
Right.
animals and books and
Right. All the
mhm.
things.
Okay.
And basically in the Stark report is that there was a lot of commotion, a lot of chaos, and the radios, some people heard them over the radio saying they were going in, or captains saying they were going in, and some people didn't hear them. So the people that and when I'm saying people, I should say firefighters. So when the firefighters didn't hear them, they started on the other side defending the fire from the outside, which created all that black smoke inside, which is why they couldn't see. Then their air tanks ran out of air quicker than they should have. So there's a malfunction in the air tanks, the radios, and then the beacons that they wear. So if they get down, they should be flashing. We're not flashing. So there was a lot on top of the kids starting the fire. There was so much chaos and so much malfunctions that should not be happening that happened that night too. So that's what was discovered, which is awful. And it's like, why all that in one night? Not one thing, like every single thing.
It was a crazy chain of events that happened.
Crazy chain of events. Yeah. So I think that too was hard to read of, like, wow, this is nothing like I thought it was safe. Like Patrick's always said, like, I'll be safe and this and that. But they always should be able to trust their gear. So then for them not to be able to trust their gear, set a tone for me of like, this should never have happened. Honestly, because the tanks are supposed to last 30 to 40 minutes. And they were in there for 14 minutes. And then Mayday went off. So that's why, 14 minutes, like everyone's life was changed. Like my life was changed forever in those 14 minutes.
Right.
And, you can relate too, because like in the instant, right? Like your life was just changed.
Just completely changed.
Completely changed.
Completely
changed. The Stark report, literally, it's like this thick, and it's like probably 6 inches thick. And it's just like, I'm recording, putting little stickies, making notes, because I want to ask the chief these little questions, because I have to know.
Did you, after the report, did you sit down with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom and dad. Yeah. You know what? It was hard, but I want to know details, and I want to know how everything went down. And they have been nothing but kind and receptive to us. They want us to be okay. They want us to know the details. And they'll give them to you as long as you want to know them. Because, it's hard for them too, because they lost a brother in their brotherhood, and they felt, gosh, this shouldn't have happened either. And so,
and I'm sure there's so many emotions on their side too, where they're like, that could have been any of us, right? Like that could have been any of us. Like, so there is, I could see there being a level of empathy that's quite deep.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing that came through. And there's something I often say, like in my own story, and I see it in a lot of other people's stories too. It's typically people that come on the show.
Yeah.
What happens is, like, we all have a certain amount of answers that we need. And some people need less and some people need more, because we don't really get closure, but it's enough for us to be able to, like, okay, I can take the next step. I could take another breath. I can start to move forward in my life, because this is just going to be a part of your life. And we know this.
Right.
But you seem to be very similar to me, and most of probably you guys listening too. You wanted a lot of answers, and that's okay. And I think, sometimes people will say though, like, I don't want to know this, or I don't want to know that. And that's okay too. Like, I think it's very personal how much you want to know in your lost story of your sibling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. For me, I have to know all details, because every night I would lay in bed and just think, okay, so he went in, he went this way, he went up the stairs, and I'm trying to map it all out. Right. So this report mapped it out, but then I'm very happy I can go in and get the details, because I just need to know every single thing.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of us have that personality type, and I think that's okay. And I love that you shared that. And I think it's really important that we give ourselves permission to get those answers. And when we feel comfortable with the answers that we've gotten, and we feel like we can put enough of the puzzle together, allow ourselves to feel like we can move forward. It's okay. We're not leaving them in the past. We're bringing them with us by getting those answers. And I think that's a huge point of your story too, Katie.
Yes.
So So obviously this has been a journey for 4 years, but
Mhm.
you have done some pretty cool things and been
Yeah.
involved in some cool things with Patrick. You're just kind of coming out of this weekend too. Do you want to tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about some of the things you've done to honor Patrick and some of the
Yeah.
amazing people that have helped you honor him? Like,
Yes.
this is so cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so cool. So I found Gloves for Grief on Instagram. I was actually and they so let me tell you, can I tell you a little backstory on them real quick?
Of
I
course.
found them on Instagram, and I literally was just talking to my mom 2 days prior of like, I wish there was something we could do to like box or hit something because I was angry. And I
Yeah.
want to be able to like take some pain out, and obviously on a punching bag, or a water bag or whatever. And so I was scrolling on Instagram, Gloves for Grief, a little sponsor, and a little thing came up about what they are and who they are. And I immediately messaged Gloves for Grief. And Tara, one of the co-founders, got back to me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you reached out. We're actually having an event in 2 weeks. You should come down." Of course. So me and my mom went down. It was at a boxing gym, like a real boxing Creed gym, and we
Yeah.
got to do a boxing routine with Ashley Grassi, which is one of the co-founders as well. And they literally welcomed us in with open arms. And I just love the environment of everybody knows you're, because everyone's grieving. And
Yep.
so you just go in there and you just have that same look in your eyes and you're accepted and there's no questions asked. You're just there and everybody embraces you with these incredible hugs. And so I started going to all their events and then became really close with Ashley and Tara. And they said, we would love to have an event with Patrick or for Patrick and Captain. And can we do it before the day before the 4-year memorial? And it would be our first travel event because they're in Orange County and I'm in the Central Valley. And I'm like, that would be amazing. So this past Saturday, we hosted Gloves for Grief in Porterville, downtown in Maine Athletics. They came and gosh, there's probably almost 70 people attending doing
Get
the
out of town,
boxing.
girl. Are you serious? That's
It was so
amazing.
Yes,
Wow.
we had to separate the workout. It was so good. And the fire guys were there even in uniform, helping set up the event, taking down the event. They came off duty and were working out. And it was just such an honor to be able to share that day with Tara and Ashley in that moment. And just see my mom and dad boxing and my brother and just to see the firemen. And it was amazing. So I am now on the board with Gloves for Grief, and I just love the punching your pain to a purpose because I feel that, grief is not easy. And everybody thinks sometimes you just need to stay calm and do yoga and this and that, which yoga is great. But sometimes you want to hit something. And sometimes it's really good to get your power back and reclaim, for a moment. And so I really, really love them so much. So that was Saturday. And then on Sunday marks the 4 years of the fire and losing their lives. So we, in the library, it's just obviously the ground zero. And we, at the fire station, we lay the wreaths at ground zero. We do prayer. The fire guys are there, all of them lined up, and they wear the hat backwards because that's the one day you can be out of uniform. And Patrick always loved to wear his hat backwards. And then they shine their axes for Ray, for the captain. So they have axe, shining in the afternoon. So we lay the wreaths. And then after we have our memorial in there, we go inside the bay, which is where they keep all the trucks. They take them out though. And all the guys are making us pancake breakfast and eggs and all the fun things. And we just hang out at the fire station and just be part of them for a little bit. And that's kind of been our day. Yeah. It was really
like a taste of his life, right? Because that was Patrick's life.
Yes, exactly. And I love it. There's a sense of peace at the fire station. There really is. It's just, these guys are incredible. And even when we're there, the tones are going off and they're running out, they're putting their turnouts on. And it takes your breath away because you're just sitting back like, wow, like these guys are running to the fires. They're running in to save people's lives. It's like, it takes it all in. And so, yeah, like what an honor to sit there and honor Patrick and Captain for that moment.
I'm sure you would have had it no other way.
Right? Yes.
No other way.
No other way.
No other way. I just think it's really, there's so many things I want to unpack before we close out, Katie, because I think it's just so interesting that you're in California, right?
Yeah.
And we all know infamous, West fires, all of that.
Yeah.
And it ends up being, so, you just never know what's going to
Right.
happen with
No.
someone, right? And I think that's such a big part of your story. And, I think that's kind of what we would have expected with the episode. It was a wildfire, he was lost, and it happened literally in his backyard. Like, that's crazy. Literally.
Yeah.
But I want to go to what you were talking about with Gloves for Grief, because, oh my God, like, I absolutely love this organization. I love that you're a part of it. I want to thank you guys for sponsoring. Like, thanks to the ladies, thanks to you. I'm so excited you're on the board now with them. I mean, how perfect.
It's so
but
cool,
I connect so much with what you're saying. And I know there's a lot of people out there too, because you guys ask me all the time, how do you get over the anger? How do you move through the anger? How do you there's a lot of how do you move through the sadness, but and I'm like you, I think yoga's great. That's fine.
Yeah.
I am a very intense person. So Gloves for Grief is perfect for me. And I'm so jealous that I can't just pop over there and take a class with you, because it's such a wonderful idea, but maybe it's something we can bring in the future. So we can chat about that.
We can chat about that for sure. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that would be kind of cool, because my brain was kind of going as we were talking for some of our Patreon members. We can offer this virtually, so we can talk. But I think it's a great thing, because I'm like you. I'm like, people are like, do some yoga, do something. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just want to punch something. I just want to hit something. I need to get this real intense energy out of me. Calming myself down was not an option. Yoga was not an option. I needed to get it out. Right?
Yes. Understood.
Yeah.
Even the fire guys were coming up to me and they're like, man, I did not realize how amazing that was going to feel. And that felt so good to be hitting that bag. And I was like, thank you. I'm so thankful you felt that way. So yeah, I mean, everybody. So I'm excited for you to be able to do that too one day soon.
Yeah. I love that idea. And again, I just hear from you guys so much. How do I release this anger? How do I, and best advice is always let yourself feel it and let it out in a positive way. And what an amazing positive way to do it, right? Please don't punch a wall, but get a punching bag or join a class like this.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that's really great. And I also just really love you sharing just all of this. We were meant to record today and talk about this because I mean, thank you for sharing, because it's a lot of people ask too, what do I do? What do I do on the anniversary? How do I honor them? And what a beautiful thing that you guys do. And you go hang out in the environment that he would have been in, right? To honor him. And I think it's just another great example of how to honor your sibling on that such a tragic and hard day.
Yeah.
And I think, I talk about this all the time. It doesn't have to be something big. It can be something small, but just being present with them for that day, I think is huge.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I think being present for them, and also I heard a quote that said something about remember how they loved you and how they love to live, and then you love yourself and live that way for them. And I just think that all together just ties in it so beautifully.
Beautiful. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to end there because that's perfect, Katie. I want to ask you one more question though. If you could go back 4 years, I typically ask this question. If you could go back 4 years, besides that beautiful quote you just shared with us, what is there any additional advice that you would give yourself on this 4-year journey after such a tragic loss of Patrick? Or any pieces of advice you would give to our amazing siblings that listen to and supporters that listen to the show?
Yeah, I would say my advice would be, when you feel like you can't breathe and you can't go on, don't think about how far you have to go. Just think about that moment and sit there and take a deep breath and just picture them with you breathing or sitting there, them hugging you. And I think if you really could put the visualize together for me, if I would go back and think about that, it just would help you naturally calm down and they're with you and you're going to make it through, and they want you to make it through. So I would say that would be my advice going back 4 years. Yeah.
I love that advice. I know that's what
Yeah.
got you through. You had
Yeah,
your little
yeah.
your little guardian angel come
Yeah,
through. You're like, this
yeah,
one's telling me
yeah.
to breathe, just like my brother.
Yeah,
It's great
yeah,
advice. I think
yeah.
it's great. Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're gonna make it through, but you are.
No, you
And then
are.
you'll look back and you'll go, how did I do that? And
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
tip right there.
Yes.
Love that. Katie, what a beautiful, beautiful episode and what a beautiful memorial and what you guys are doing at Gloves for Grief. I love it. Tell us where we can find you guys on Instagram and stuff, and then also where we can find you and connect with you. But this is so cool, and especially if you're in California, you guys need to check it out. But
Yes. So you can go to glovesforgrief.org, and their website tells you all the events and like how we got started and all the things. Also on Instagram is at Gloves for Grief. And then go ahead and check that out. Follow them. And then I'm at It's Katie Sue. And it's _ Katie Sue. And you can find me, connect with me. If you have any questions or just, like want to share stories, I never want anybody to feel alone. And that's what I love about you is like when I found you at season 1, I was like, oh my gosh, I found somebody that gets yeah. So I love what you do. So I really appreciate you being so open all these years,
Thank you, Katie. Yeah. Well, and of course, that'll be in the show notes, and I'm sure you guys heard the lovely commercial about Gloves for Grief earlier in the episode. So yes, make sure you connect with them. Katie is an open book. And Katie, thank you so much for sharing your story and Patrick's story with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. What an honor.
Thank you so much for listening to the Surviving Siblings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did creating it for you, then share it on your chosen social media platform. And don't forget to tag us at Surviving Siblings Podcast so that more surviving siblings can find us. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Surviving Siblings Podcast. All links can be found in the show notes, so be sure to check those out too. Thank you again for the support. Until the next episode, keep on surviving, my surviving siblings.